Let's go ahead and meeting order, huh? Thanks for coming, folks. Let's go ahead and upload the meetings. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thanks. Call when you're ready.
Trustee Gator,
Here.
Trustee Jerome,
Here.
Trustee Kenny, Trustee McDonald. Here. Trustee Whitehouse,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson, Mayor Hammond.
Here. Any amendments or changes to the agenda that we need to know of? Okay. Any conflicts of interest we need to be aware of, the board members? Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and open up the public comment portion of this meeting tonight. Any individuals that are wishing to speak tonight, especially if you're virtual, you're going to need to raise your hand and let the crystal know that you want to speak, and you'll be able to have 3 minutes up at the podium and speak on non-agenda items. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll start with the room.
Christine Gator, I live in Old Town. One thing is, I hope that with this comprehensive plan going to the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission was not here during the town hall. So I just hope, I don't know what the plan is, but I hope that those comments can be printed out so that the Planning Commission can read them along with the comments that are in the comp plan. And then also, I'm just a little concerned about what happened in the Planning Commission on Monday, and just the will of the people not being listened to. On the comp plan right now, it closed. And for the equity clause, 14 are for removing it, 5 are for leaving it in. And at the Planning Commission, the direction was given to staff to not only leave it in, but to expand it. So basically going against the majority, the will of the people. Also the downtown core, where they want to turn those houses into commercial zoning eventually. Obviously the land use map doesn't do that, but the downtown core on the comp plan, there's 5 people that commented that they don't want that to happen. 1 person commented that they want it to happen, yet in the Planning Commission told and directed staff to leave that in. So I'm just a little concerned that the will of the people, what the people are commenting, is not being heard, it's not being listened to. And then as far as the equity clause, it's, oh, I didn't write the page number. Oh, goal 3.4 in public service pillar. Ensure more diversity of voices in town boards and commissions, for instance, for Hispanics, Latinx, and people with disabilities. So I just wanted to point out that Trustee Gator is proof that we do not have an issue, that the town of Wellington has no problem voting in someone who's a minority. So there is no problem. There's equal opportunity in this town. The people mentioned here did not run. There's no people with disabilities or Hispanics that ran in the last campaign. And if we put this into, basically it's affirmative action. If we make that happen in this town, the Trustee McDonald, Trustee Kinney, and Trustee Gator who campaigned, they put their time and money into the campaign and they were elected because they had the most votes. If one of them was then not allowed to be on the board because of affirmative action and the person who did no work got to be on the board ahead of someone who was duly elected, I think that's a little unfair. So I just request that you guys do the will of the people, the majority of the comments, and you actually listen. And so those are my comments. Thank you.
Mrs. Gator, before you step down, the instructions were to state your name and address for the record. You stated Old Town as your address. What is your address, please?
8132 4th Street.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gator. Anyone else in the room care to have a time with public comment? Okay, can we go to the Zoomers out there?
We have Kathy Widelis. If you can state your name and address for the record, you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Kathy Widelis. I live at 3405 Revere Court in Wellington, Silver and Viewpoint. And I finally read through the entire draft. I read other parts of it over the entire public comment time, but I'd like to say it's not my idea of an official serious town document. It's filled with opinions and editorial comments that are at best inappropriate for an official planning document. And they're often divisive and insulting to Wellington and the people who live here. I think we have spent a lot of money on fluff. And I think our town staff and these consultants should rework this into something more compact with fewer and more solid specific goals. I mean, they have goals like provide information to the elected town officials. I mean, the staff already does that. I mean, why does that have to be a goal? A goal is usually something that you don't have that you need to work for. I just found some of it just fluff. And then I'd like to have another public comment period if they are able to, you know, pare this down. And I realize you guys are all tired of it. But due to COVID and the small amount of number of actual human beings, people that live here who commented, I mean, like Christine said, you know, there were 14 people who, you know, wanted one thing and 5 that want something else. That's under 20 people in this big town. So I think we need more time for people to be able to know what's going on. But I really would like them to rework it first. Anyhow, I'd like you to postpone approving it for 6 months or more. At the very least, please open it to the public once that implementation part has been completed. That really shocked me. At the end, it looked like, okay, oh, this looks like you know, something, a plan. And then it was all blank. And then it said, this won't be filled in till after the public comment. And it did not say, and then there'll be another public comment on the implementation. It was like, oh, okay, so that's that. So what we have right now is like a college assignment to imagine and make a place for a town called Wellington. But Wellington is really real and the residents are real. And this plan seems unconnected to people I know here in Wellington. So I would not like it to be approved. And if I would really like some more time for people to be able to comment on it. So I'm sorry, I realize the staff and the trustees are tired of this, but it's not good. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
We have no other hands raised at this time.
Okay, we'll close the public comment this meeting. Move on to our next agenda item. Looks like tonight we have a proclamation. Haven't had one of those in a while, so that's nice to see one. Okay, this is a proclamation talking about National Volunteer Appreciation Week. I'll go ahead and read this. Bear with me because the microphone's a little short. National Volunteer Week, April 18th through 24th, 2021. Whereas recognition of volunteerism in the United States was first established by presidential proclamation in 1974 and is celebrated annually. And during this week all over the nation, service projects will be performed and volunteers recognized for their commitment to service, investment, in enhancing the community and the lives of others. And whereas volunteering one's time, talents, resources has been an integral part of Wellington, and it is essential that we continue this tradition to preserve and improve the quality of life for all residents in our town and community. And whereas volunteers in the town of Wellington and various other agencies have persevered through the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas the town of Wellington is proud of all volunteers and wishes to recognize these members of our community who selflessly serve those around them and help make our community a strong and incredible place to live. Now, therefore, I, Troy Hammond, Mayor, Town of Wellington, Colorado, do hereby proclaim this week, April 18th to the 24th, 2021, as National Volunteer Week in the town of Wellington and urge all fellow citizens to volunteer in one or our local community and organizations. Thank you very much. That's good. Appreciate it. Sign that right now. Okay, we'll move on. Talk about our consent agenda, meeting minutes of the March 23rd, 2021 board meetings. Are there any issues with our consent agenda tonight that we need to know about? We're making a motion to pass it. Nope. Okay. Can I get a motion to pass March 23rd, 2021 board trustees meeting?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Jerome,
Yes.
trustee McDonald,
Yes.
trustee Whitehouse,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Okay. Action items. We got one. Procurement policy change requests. This is going to be by Judy, our finance director.
She's coming into the meeting.
Can you see my screen, Crystal?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this is actually page 19 of your packet this evening, but I just wanted to bring it up so we can reference it as we run through this. So when I first came on board, the procurement policy had been updated 11/17 of 2019. So it's in pretty good shape, but several the directors came to me sharing things that weren't working great. And so part of our issues were we had thresholds for signing authority, which differed from if you're using a purchasing card. And so part of this, the changes that we're asking for tonight is I would like to combine the thresholds with the signature authority. So it's more efficient. It doesn't matter how you purchase it, your signing authority and your limit is the same. And so as I run through these, the purchasing card as it stands now is limited to $1,000. And I would like to change that to be $1,000 unless it is defined below. And so those folks with signing authority higher than that, if someone accepts a purchasing card, we would go ahead and use that. And it's an easier process than having to turn around and do a requisition and then move forward with that. The second change I would request would be to delete a virtual card in its entirety. A virtual card right now, it says up to $50,000. I am a strong believer that if we need to be doing these type of transactions, we probably need to think about what we're doing. A virtual card is when you call your credit card company, you get a one-time 16-digit code. And it's generally used when you're worried that your card's going to be compromised. If that's really part of our thought process, we need to not be doing that. So I would like to delete that in its entirety. And then moving down, we have changed some of our engineers have been really become important. And when I first put this out there, we had said 5,000 to 10,000. I would like that limit to be changed to 5,000. And so that allows them as they're moving through some of these projects to continue moving. If we have it at $1,000 and they consistently have to come back and get a division manager or a director to help them move forward with that. On the purchasing agents, so that is not defined clearly. That would be in the accounts that we've changed the accounts payable position to be a full-time person. And I would like, so that person to have, that's actually a limit that's going down. That would be $5,000. And inside of that, that would also include Jenny Jones, who is over in the Public Works Department. That $1,000 limit really is very tight for her when she is trying to help out the Public Works Department. I would like to look at having the directors have permission to move up to $25,000. Now, as we move through these, I think it's very important that we realize all of these numbers that we're talking about, these are appropriated amounts. These are things that have already been approved in the budget, and we're just allowing people to move forward. So the directors would move up to 25,000, and then the town administrator would move up to 50,000. So if I had something for myself or one of the other directors that say is $30,000, what I would need to do is I would get the information for that, and then I would take that information over to the town administrator, and she would have to sign off on that. Then it gets submitted to the accounts payable department. So it would be requiring 2 signatures at that point. And then under the bidding thresholds, as it moved down here a little bit, I just wanted to expand this a little bit. With the 2 written quotes, I'd like to expand that from 5,000 to 25,000. With the internet, there is a lot of information that's available to us. And again, I'd like some of these to be efficient. Sometimes by the time you go out for those bids, it's really holding things up, and it's not, you're looking at three months before you make a purchase that you could have done a little bit more efficiently. Moving down, I would like to expand that. So from 10,000 to 25,000, and then the capital improvement, expand that from 10,000 to the 250,000. And then on the sealed competitive bidding, expand that to 250,000. And then this is the one that the very last one is what I wanted to visit with just a little bit. The appropriated items, if it's in the budget, this is the biggest request that we're looking for right now. Anything that's over $30,000 needs to come to the board. So these are amounts, we've already talked about them, they're in the budget. And as we are approaching 2 very large projects for the sewer plant and the water plant, that's pretty much means every single pay application, even though the budget's been approved and the design, by the time we get to construction, they will have been approved. This means we'd be bringing every single pay application. And so by the time we get everything into the packet, get it reviewed, this really slows the process down. So I'd like to request that if it is an appropriated item, that it does not need to come to the board as long as the signing thresholds are met, as we talked about above. And then the non-appropriated items, this was the request, and I expanded the language on this a little bit on the memo that was attached up above, or the description. And so this is, change this to the town administrator for non-appropriated items to $25,000. And this is within the same department. So what this allows, if something needs to be switched around, and it's still in the water fund or it's still in the general fund, you can't change funds, but as long as it's within the same fund, that is administratively, we could go to the town administrator, she could move funding from one line item to the other. Non-appropriated items right now are at 10,000. And so what this would allow us to do is administratively, as when we put the budget together, we're almost about 18 months in front of where we could possibly be in November or December. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And this does not, it would not include anything that was not, it does not cover additional appropriations. So if something is an addition to the budget and we are not having savings somewhere else, then absolutely we have to come to the board for an additional appropriation. And so the non-appropriated items would be the ones that we wouldn't have to do anything with the state of Colorado. It would simply allow conversations with our town administrator, and that we could move funding in with it as long as we stayed within the same fund. And then the last part was some clarification of the titles. Our org chart changed a bit during when we did this last budget. So just cleaning up some of the titles to match the org chart. That was, it was just some clarification of titles is what I had requested on page 8. And so with that, if any of the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer it. Or also looking for a motion to approve the changes this evening.
Any questions for Judy tonight? Trustee Gator? You want to go first?
I'll wait, but I'll wait for other people.
Or why don't we do that? But somebody might get a chance to ask questions. Trustee McDonald?
I don't have a comment, I guess. I just have I'm not necessarily comfortable with deleting out the appropriated amount. I think that maybe aligning it with the capital improvements up to 250,000 grants a significant amount of flexibility, but still allows the board to provide some oversight.
Trustee Jerome, anything?
I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. The first comment I have is the reason this purchasing policy was put into place a couple of years ago was the board at that time felt that the money wasn't being managed correctly, so the board opted to go with the purchasing policy. In the last year, I've seen a drastic change in the way we are doing business and spending money. It seems that all the staff are very conscientious about trying to show cost savings, trying to go out and get the best deal for the town, which makes me very happy. You know, that doesn't always work. And, you know, that's part of going out into the free market and purchasing items is, you know, sometimes you're going to be less than what we expected, and sometimes it's more. The market changes on a daily basis almost, so there's no way to really, when we do budgets, it's always amazing to me how, you know, we put these figures that are not going to happen for over a year, and the economy changes, the markets change, and when it comes time to spend that money, sometimes we do better, sometimes we do worse, but that's just the nature of the free market. So the question I had, though, is, Judy, something that concerns me, and it concerned me back when we originally did this first purchasing policy, is P cards. And are we doing like purchase order back P card purchases? So there's a backtrack on those to show where the money's going for sure, and to put that into the correct account. I know the common practice these days in the private sector is they have these software applications that you put in your credit card information that you of a purchase you did, and it automatically ties it back to a PO within the company's accounting system. So there's a lot of tieback in that case. Is that something that's happening, or is that something that maybe on the horizon?
No, so these do come back through, and then it's absolutely, everybody, when you get your P card, you have to sign a purchasing card agreement, and within that, you have to upload the receipts. And trust me, I haven't been super popular because I am adamant that every receipt, and I don't care if it's for $2, it is taxpayers' money, and we are responsible for this funds. And so these receipts come in, they are tied to, so everybody has their statement, and then we tie that, and we definitely look at every single purchase, and then whether it's on the correct account number. And then, you know, part of, we're working through the audit right now, and part of that internal control process is that, so for example, somebody in my department could code something, but then it would be up to, depending on their signing limit, that I have to look at it, make sure that it is in the proper account in my department. Then it gets submitted to accounts payable. That position is new, but she has been phenomenal. And so pretty soon after when you do this all day long, you get to know those account numbers pretty much frontwards and backwards. And she'll come to me and she'll say, I'm not sure this is in the right account. So yes, I think that the purchasing cards are effective, and I think it takes a lot of the paperwork out as far as being efficient, or if something's online. So it takes a lot of that out, but we can tie them to purchasing cards. And if it's anything else that we need to look at, we can print that prior to a purchase and upload that.
Thank you.
You good? Trustee Whitehouse?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. I was just curious. I don't have any issues with anything I've seen on the change to this document. I mean, efficiency and not holding things up is important. I mean, is this for a municipality of our size? Are these sort of normal and customary limits? Again, are these the best practices? I'm just sort of curious about getting a perspective on this, please.
So from my experience, the purchasing cards, I like having the lower dollar limit for people in the field. It is not their job to know the budget. It is not their job to be, familiar with all of the line items. So I do like the $1,000 limit on those. But for the directors, I definitely, I think that these are good moves. And I should have prefaced this with this. These requests was the entire leadership team. It wasn't that I sat down and I looked at them. Particularly the Public Works Department came to me when I first came on board and said, these are the things that don't work for me. And so we worked through pretty much the first part of that document. I attached the whole revision policy. We didn't really visit the travel policy. There hasn't been any travel really with COVID or anything. So of course we can't fix anything if we don't know if it's broken at this point. So this was an effort put together by the entire leadership team. Mr. Whitehouse, you're muted, pretty please.
No, I was going to say thank you.
Oh, thanks.
But I mean, I understand the efficiency part here, but are these sort of in line with other municipalities and again, how they do it? Obviously you find the bugs as you go along and go, well, this number causes a huge paper trail that doesn't really create efficiency, but that was really my question, is if this is sort of normal and customary.
No, the place I was before, the limits were a little bit higher. And then I like having the second signature from the town administrator. If it gets overwhelming, we can certainly put Kelly into part of that. But what it does is it brings any of those large purchases, I think they're on her radar. So she understands what's going on in those departments as well. So I do like having that second signature on the larger items.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Trustee Gator.
So I did have a couple of questions. Judy, you had mentioned that with the water plants in the upcoming things, it's going to cause a lot of items to have to come up. And I was a little confused because under the Board of Trustees approvals required, the third item there says purchases on board approved contracts are exempt within the contract amount. Wouldn't these items that they'd be needing for the water plant fall under the contract we signed with the construction company?
You are correct. I was referring to other, as we start into some of the deferred maintenance on some of these plants. If it's a filter and it's not anything that is, some of those filters, I mean, you can hit that $30,000 threshold pretty quickly. And then if we get out of sync to get onto an agenda item where we miss that Thursday cutoff, we could be 4 weeks out before we could get in front of you. And so for those line items that are, it could be a repair item, and without, I hate to push people into a corner where then they suddenly call it an emergency. And if it's really not an emergency, my preference would be we don't call it that. But sometimes when we miss those cutoffs, then they appear in front of you because it was an emergency.
Great, thank you for clarifying, because I was a little confused. I thought it was referring to the contracted stuff. Overall, I don't have issues with the adjustments to the thresholds. That's fine. The signature authority guidelines, I don't have any problem with adjusting numbers under the town administrator. The one concern that I have with removing appropriated budget items, I know we've actually had two of them. Well, one was budget, I think the other was contract, but we've had items come before the board for contract approval or discussion. And in two different cases, there have been issues that a board member knew about with one of the companies that we were working with that they were then brought to the board, which caused reconsideration. consideration of the item. The concern that I have is that we will not have that if something's already been appropriated. If it's a larger contract, then that would just move forward. The board would not know. And I do also have some concerns that I understand it's a little bit more work. There's not that many items that come before us for budget approval, but it does just provide greater transparency so the public just is aware of what's going on. So I do think that that would be a step that we would lose, that I would prefer to keep that in place versus just saying, if it's in the budget, do whatever. And then the other concern I have is just with moving non-appropriated items, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, but in your summary, you said existing or new line items, which I'm not sure if that's intended, but that sounds like the town administrator could create a new line item in a budget that's basically, we have money going somewhere within that department that the board never approved. And that's a little bit concerning about increasing the amount that can happen with.
So let me give you an example. If somebody came and they said, we're not going to spend money on X, but we need it over here, I would create a new line item, particularly if this is something we want to track for more than 1 year. What you don't want to do is, so I'll use an example for when you start putting things inside of one line item, and then if I want to go back 3 years from now and see what the history on that account was, I have to pull and completely separate that out. And so my preference would be to create a new line item. And then if we wanted to track something, particularly if it's a project or whatever it is, then I can tie the history directly to that. And so, for example, if we moved to $25,000 to a new line item for something that was more efficient in one of the departments, it could be a new line item. And so it's certainly not a new expenditure. It would be for tracking purposes.
Okay, so under the current policy, if there was $25,000 that needed to be moved and you felt a new line item would have to be created, what would the process be for that to happen as it stands right now?
So for right now, if we wanted to move or do those funds, the limit is $10,000.
Correct. So let's say that you needed to move $25,000. What would the process be to do that?
So we would have to come to the board and say that we want to move those funds.
Okay. And I think that's what I'm saying is, especially with, again, I understand we're talking about a budget of millions, but that's a pretty significant amount of money that we're reappropriating somewhere else. And I would feel much more comfortable that at the very minimum, that's something that we are aware of. I'm not saying that needs to be a huge thing that we're spending tons of time on, but I think that that's something the Board of Trustees should be involved in that. So I would prefer that we keep that at the 10,000.
Well, I had a question. I mean, is there a reporting mechanism, more of an administrative thing, that if something like this happens, that we would be informed, like, oh, you know, this GL has been reappropriated? Would there be reporting back, as opposed to, you know, maybe that comes out on the admin report on Fridays, that instead of it requiring a board action, would it just be a board notification? Kind of like when Mr. Byrd does an administrative approval for a sign or something from that would fall under his area of expertise. I mean, is there envisioned a report back feature that we would just be made aware of, you know, if some of these things happened?
Well, how I've done it in the past, and I don't have history with you guys yet, is during my treasurer's report or my quarterly report, I've always addressed large items, and then I would just touch base if there was anything moving or shaking. Again, you know, we don't have a crystal ball. So when we set out to do a budget in September, things happen. And so I just like to keep my board absolutely aware of, and we'll talk about sales tax. We'll talk about just, and I try to use those quarterly reports. I'm a big proponent of no surprises. And so it could be something smaller than that. But if I felt that it was something the board needs to be aware of, that's usually the venue that I use to keep everybody kind of in the loop as we move through the year, changes, things that have happened that I feel that you need to be aware of.
I guess the only question I have, thinking about Trustee Gator's question on that, it seems to me that when the board approves a budget, it doesn't leave an opening to add a new line without some type of budget amendment and appropriations by the board. Is that a correct assumption? Or
Well, there's a little bit of a distinction. So we need to be square with the state of Colorado. And so that's an appropriation amount. So the ordinance that we sign, it says these are the dollar amounts we're going to spend, and we address that under the fund. So we say general fund, we're going to spend this much, water, sewer, drainage. And so we address all of those line items, or not line items, but funds. And that is what we, when we certify our budget to the state of Colorado. So we have to be square with the state. In addition to that, there's a big distinction of being square with your board. And so we, as long as we do not go over that dollar amount, I would not file a budget amendment or an additional appropriation with the state of Colorado. But being square with my board is different than being square with the state. So I would notify you that we are going to move money. And we kind of did this with the SCADA project that came in before. And the direction was, we're going to move forward with it, but we're going to try to save money out of another capital line item. And we don't know that exactly. We're only 2 months into the budget. So that's something we're definitely going to keep an eye on. And that's a perfect example. Being square with my board is different than being square with the state of Colorado. We will not file an additional appropriation in the water fund unless we went over the amount that we had specified. But being absolutely transparent with the board, we will notify you. And that's what we did when we came and we said, hey, the SCADA project is going to be over the dollar amount that we anticipated.
okay, right. I mean, I understand the state statute as far as appropriating the monies, but I guess I was getting more towards what Trustee Gator was getting at is I don't know that under the water fund, for example, we have several line items that range from office supplies down to chemicals and everything in between. And adding a whole new line that the board didn't approve to begin with, and then sliding a bunch of money from someplace else into that slot. I'm not saying that I don't trust it, but I'm just not super comfortable with that happening. I don't know. I know sometimes it's a process that needs to be done quickly for efficiency. Something came up. We didn't spend all the money in line items 17, 18, 19, 20. We got this money and we'd like to buy that. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but I'm just looking for the good solution on how this board can be comfortable with it when it does happen. Not saying that I'm not okay with you guys doing that, but I guess we need to have a mechanism that is in place that informs this board when these things are going to happen. Not necessarily that we need to say yes or no to it, but just the fact that, hey, this came up, we had extra money, we saved you money here, here, and here, and we're going to use that money right here because we need it. I don't have a problem with that, but I'm just kind of trying to figure out how we could be informed as a board, either prior to it happening or as it's happening, maybe not in a meeting, maybe an email. I don't know what's the best solution, but that's my only discomfort level with this whole thing.
Understood. So thank you, Mayor and Trustees. An example I can give you of this happened to me when I was in Loveland. We hit COVID and the clerk's office started the patio permit program, which we ended up getting a lot of funding for it. And it ended up costing us a lot of money to put that program on. So I had to take money out of another line. Of course, I didn't have a patio permit line item by any means. And so we just took money from another project that I had slated and moved it down. and did that through the finance department. And we did that in order to be transparent about that. We did notify the council members at the time during a public meeting and let them know that that was the plan, because this was a new program. And then the treasurer, the finance director, actually added that into his report, which he did on a monthly basis. So I anticipate if this would be approved by you all, that it would be the same type of a process where an email would either come from me or, generally it would, yes, it would come from me. Let's just say it would come from me to advise you of any changes that would be made, that we would be creating another line and, under a separate budget, and the reason why that was happening. And then Judy would again report it in her quarterly report. This is not a deal breaker for us. We're just trying to find efficiencies in how we do things here operationally. So if you're comfortable with it, that's great. If you're not, like I said, it's not a deal breaker, but it helps with our efficiencies.
So, sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So thank you for explaining that, Ms. Garcia. And my personal preference is I would prefer that still come to the board. If we are going to have a workaround to where you don't necessarily need board approval to do so, I do like what Ms. Garcia said happened, where it was brought to the board, and maybe that's a staff report where it's a document that's attached, it's brought in a public meeting. Because to me, I think I don't have so much of an issue, again, of trusting staff as to, okay, we need to move things. I understand from an accounting standpoint, I get that part. What it is the transparency and accountability that we have to the citizens as well, just so they're aware of what's going on. I understand we have good staff right now, and hopefully we always have good staff. But I think it's just better if we put things in place that don't leave any room for future for there to be a problem, for anyone to ever question, well, what did that money get really sent to? So I think either one, I'd prefer that to be brought to the board. Especially things like the skater project. I mean, one of those was $50,000 above budget, and I get that, and I understand the process behind that. But I think that's really important, that that's something the board is aware of, and the board says, yes, we understand why this is important. We still want to move forward with that. I don't think it's appropriate that staff makes that decision, and then the board is left wondering, oh, well, we actually don't think that's a great way to go. So that's my preference, would be that we keep that with the board, that we make that call. But if not, I would like to see it that it's actually right after it happens at the next available meeting, that it's presented in a staff report, so it's public for everyone to understand that it happened. So there's never something where people come back a year later and they're like, wait, this wasn't in the budget.
Right. Okay. Just to follow up with, those are good points, both from you and Trustee Gator and yourself. I heard what you said as well. I'm okay with what our staff wants to do. I've got confidence in what they're going for, but absolutely, if you're moving money and doing that sort of thing, we need to know about it. Bring the report to us. I'm not saying I need to see it beforehand, but we need to see the paper trail, basically, so we can, and if we don't like something, we can readdress the program then. It's not working. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Because I want you to be efficient. I want you to move fast. We got a lot to do and a lot of big projects to get done. So whatever we can do to help. So if the board's made their comments, let's just open it up to the public, and let's see what the public has to say.
I have Melissa Whitehouse. If you can state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Board, Mr. Mayor. Melissa Whitehouse, 3922 Grant Avenue. And I really appreciate the fact that Judy has just taken on a handful of responsibilities, mostly with trying to go through and establish what the financial history of the town has been. And she's done it in short order. The only issue that I would say that can be, I think, fairly easily addressed is this issue of notification to the board. Currently, Judy provides a quarterly report. If these types of line items are added within those 3-month timeframes, is it possible that a single document with red line changes, just as Judy has provided today, for the changes that she wants to make, can she do a red line single document under item E, reports, possibly just change to the budget line items rather than having her do a full presentation or anything like that, and possibly just making it once per month? I would think that that would be sufficient to satisfy the board members. That way you're not waiting an entire quarter to get her report. It's happening once per month. It's a single document. She doesn't have to present it. It's just there through notification for red line. And the other part of this whole question about budget is, I recognize that our finance director and her staff fairly new. I know this last year because of COVID as well, is that the budget was not introduced until pretty late in the season, and there were very good reasons for that. This year, if the budget discussions start as they have in the past in the work sessions, obviously not at the board trustees meetings, but in the work sessions, if they can start at approximately July, as they did before in the work sessions, I think that would give the trustees plenty of time to recognize anything that they don't like, and it can be addressed in a much more timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
We have Jess, if you can state your name and address for the record, you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi there, my name is Jessie and I'm in the Harvest Village neighborhood. I definitely am not familiar with the town budgets, and I am not an expert whatsoever. But I do feel like any money that's being moved around, just as Judy talked about informing her board, it would be so appreciated to just have that that same transparency with the citizens of our town. And I'm not sure how that works, but I would assume that it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, I just thought that I would comment on that, and that our family really appreciates knowing what's going on with money in our town. So that's all that I'll say about that. And then I also wanted to chime in about the National Volunteer Week. We have started a monthly town cleanup, and
Excuse me, Jesse,
yes,
can you hear me? Well,
yes.
we're into our action items now tonight, and that agenda item we've kind of passed up, so we're kind of out of sequence there. And
Okay, I thought so. I wasn't sure if that was appropriate, but
yeah, I would like to have heard what you had to say about it, because it's important. Well, how about you email me something on that? Can you do that?
yeah, that would be great.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
You can get my town email and just send me what your concerns or what your comments are, and I'll get that circulated properly.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Hammond, Jess, I apologize. I missed your address. I caught Harvest Village, but we need to catch your address for the record, please.
Sure, it's 3 Hackberry Street.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have no other hands raised at this time.
Okay, we'll close the virtual session. Anyone in the room here have anything they want to talk about this budget or in these, what we're getting ready to do here? Okay, let's bring it back to the board. If I understood everybody correct, and then let's just hear it one more time if I didn't, but it sounds like we're kind of okay. We're okay with this, with these increases here, but if you're moving money around, we want to know about it.
I am okay with the items up until the Board of Approval change, the Board of Trustees approval. The 2 items proposed to change there, deleting the appropriated budgeted items above 30,000 to remove that, and the not appropriated change to 25,000. I'm not comfortable with those 2. I'm fine with the rest of them, but those 2 I would like to see, as maybe we can revisit those later, figure out a good system that we can agree on. But I would prefer, if we're going to pass it today, that we remove those 2 for now, and we can revisit that if need be.
Comments?
My only recommendation was just to revisit and reiterate was to change the 30,000 to a threshold of the 250,000 to be in alignment with the capital improvements line. So instead of deleting it out, the 30,000 amount that's currently allowed would be increased, or I'm proposing that we change that to 250,000 to be in alignment with the capital improvements line.
The appropriated budget item. That's right. That's what you're saying. the appropriated budget item of 30,000?
So where it says deleted, instead of
Yes.
30,000, 250,000 is what I'm proposing. Other than that, I have no other changes or suggestions.
Final comments? Anything? Trustee Whitehouse?
Well, I guess the question I have, I mean, I think that's, maybe a reasonable suggestion. Question is to our finance director. I mean, is that a reasonable direction, or I'm looking for a professional opinion?
Yeah, Judy, can you work with those two
Absolutely.
changes?
I appreciate that, and it can be premature. We're still getting to know one another. So if we can get a motion, we'll, with trustee McDonald's recommendation of the 250. So we'll do that one. And I will leave the non-appropriated items alone, and we will work through this budget. And like I said, we'll get to know one another. We'll get a few quarterly reports behind us, and we can revisit this.
Good
I'm
enough?
absolutely not comfortable with the 250,000 number.
Want to explain that a little bit more? Why that much of a difference? What's the benefit?
Yeah, I think that it satisfies both sides of the argument. It increases the threshold amount to align with other items that are presented in that fit like a capital improvement item would also potentially be like a water treatment plant item. So increasing that threshold amount up to the 250,000 gives some flexibility for staff to be able to move, but it still gives the board the ability to have some oversight while we're getting to know each other.
Okay, gives a little flexibility then, but it's not out of control, right? Kind of thing, okay, all right. Any comments on that? Trustee Whitehouse, any other comments on that?
Well, I was just, I understand Trustee McDonald's choice of the $250,000. I guess the question is that a good amount? Is it too high? Is there somewhere between? And again, I don't have the perspective I'm sort of asking a question to see if this is the appropriate way to go. Again, I do have complete confidence in the staff, and there's certainly multiple levels of checks and balances. This stuff doesn't go up. Yeah. So I'm convinced with that. Just trying to understand a little better.
Well,
Ms.
And
Staples,
just
do you believe that threshold amount would give staff a significant amount of flexibility or the ability to be more efficient in their decision-making and purchasing?
Absolutely. I feel it's a great compromise. These are, just as a gentle reminder, these are budgeted items, so they're already approved.
yeah,
And you would hear from us then, as this reads, you would hear from us instead of everything that was over 30,000, you would hear from us with everything over $250,000.
So Mayor Hammond, I'll make a final comment relative to that and why I think it's important for the board to continue to have a little bit of oversight. We have an obligation. So the staff's primary obligation is to be fiscally responsible with the budget that has been approved by the board.
right.
As elected officials, we have some longitude or latitude to be able to ensure that the decisions that we're making also fit within the values that we've set for the organization. So our decisions aren't always necessarily made based on what is the best budgeted amount. Sometimes there are decisions that are made based on the values of the community as well.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion, or you got more to say?
I guess my concern with the $250,000 is because that applies to contracts as well. So for a great example is the comprehensive plan that we did. I think the contract for that was 120,000 or something like that. That would fall under something to where a company could be chosen by staff and that would never come to us because it's a budgeted item. It falls within the $250,000. And that's a really important thing that I think that the board needs to have a say in, which would not happen because it falls, that to me is just, that's why to me, I'm not comfortable with the 250,000. That's just way too much that because that's not just like, okay, we're going to buy a truck I don't have a problem. We're going to buy a truck. I don't care if you buy a Toyota or a Ford or a Chevy, that's fine. But now that also applies to contracts. So that's a company that we're working with for a parks master plan, a downtown master plan, those contracts, as long as it's budgeted in there, that no longer comes to the board because that's just approved by staff because it's under the 250,000 threshold. And that to me is a major concern, because when it comes to things like studies or things that we're doing, I believe that that's important, that we not just have a say in, okay, what are we going to do in terms of what will happen, but okay, what are the companies we're going to work with? Do these fit with our town? Do these fit with our board's vision for the future? And so that's the concern I have. And
Right. You're
So-
250,000.
I understand it provides a lot of flexibility. To me, that's way too much. If we want to talk maybe 30 to maybe going 40 to 50,000, I'm willing to say, let's try to, because we did see we're moving the town administrator's signature up to 50,000. I'd be comfortable to start with 50,000 and kind of see where that goes, but I'm not comfortable with 250,000 because I think that there's things that we should still be a part of in making that selection.
Is that
Well, I
a
would like-
possibility, Patty? Are we going to see contracts go by that for under $250,000 that we won't get to understand or know?
So I've seen it done a myriad of ways over my career. So generally when it's related to what I've seen, it's work that works well, is things that are related to studies are generally brought before the Board of Trustees for approval. It doesn't matter the dollar amount because it does impact, that would be your decision. That wouldn't be a staff decision to make whether it was budgeted for or not. And I don't know how to phrase it or word it in this document to clarify that. But I would feel more comfortable with having the Board of Trustees reviewing those contracts to make sure, it's your studies, we just facilitate it, but these are your responsibility. So I'm not quite sure how to phrase it. And I do understand, Trustee Gator, your concern about that. And so I don't have an answer for that. I apologize.
Patty?
Could it be just for purchases and drop contracts off of that?
That's what I'm thinking. Judy, thoughts?
Well, and also, I'd like to point out that anything that's over $25,000, the directors will be in front of Patty. So we will be in front of our town administrator. First, it would require a second signature, but also at that point, we would be following her direction. So this isn't like I can just go out and randomly spend money up to that dollar amount. Anything over $25,000 requires that I have a conversation with my town administrator.
Sure, but where I think what the trustees are looking for is to have those contracts brought to them, and maybe that's my role, that those contracts I don't approve. I just know that I don't, and maybe I don't know how it gets phrased. I like Trustee Jerome's idea about, maybe it's purchases and not contracts, and it's something we can revisit later. I do believe we are kind of in this growing time. We're all getting, like Judy said, getting to know each other. So I certainly don't want to step out on a limb and do anything that would cause any consternation by the board or any concerns. I want you guys to make sure that you are very comfortable with how we're moving forward. So perhaps it is changing that to purchases only and leaving contracts out of it, and those contracts come to the Board of Trustees that are over the $30,000.
What I'd like to request is that let's move forward with the items that don't have anything to do with the Board of Trustee approval. And can we bring these other things back to a work session and have a discussion on that? Because I don't want to try and come up with something halfway that some of us may or may not be comfortable with. If it's something that it might help if we just take the time to have a conversation, throw out some ideas, and then we can come back and do the rest of it in another meeting. Because that would adjust most of the time consuming things. I understand potentially there might be things upcoming, but I think we can knock this out in the next month or so. And I don't think there'll be a major problem or setback to staff by just leaving out those two items at the bottom.
This is Trustee Whitehouse. That does Again, I think we've kind of talked around this a little bit, and I think I think Trustee Gator's suggestion is can we revisit these two items and make sure that we have a solution that we all kind of understand clearly. And I think there's some great points been raised in this discussion. But I think there seems to be a general agreement about moving forward with this and resolving most of the immediate pain points. But I think maybe, as Trustee Gator suggested, maybe a little, is it a reasonable time frame to say in the next month, can we look at this again and try to get to a better conclusion, more complete answer?
So Trustee Whitehouse, I think that's a great idea. We will be looking at much further out than 1 month though. We'll be looking at several months out, and that's okay. And maybe at that time we can look at the travel policy as well. Maybe, by then that's another area we can delve into and take a look at together with the trustees. So if you're okay, I mean, I would love to see the balance of this approved, and then we'll just pull those last two items off and we can talk about that at a future work session several months into the future.
Well, I have another question. I mean, is there an amount that, again, I understand Trustee Gator's concerns at the 250. I mean, would an $80,000 limit on that reduce a little bit of pain if it's going to be several months? Is that an appropriate number? Again, I don't really know where these figures are coming in. I recognize there's a need for it, but is there a short-term compromise? It's going to take us several months to get back to this. That would it make sense making a smaller adjustment and leaving the non-appropriated items as is? Or so that's just my comment.
Yeah, so thank you, Trustee Whitehouse. I don't have a set number that is, this is the magic number, because I don't know that it's right or wrong, because it could be that if we make the adjustment that Trustee Jerome suggested and remove the contracts completely, maybe I don't have an issue at all. I would just prefer it to be something we can sit down and have a conversation as a board as a whole. And I think that so few things come to us for that appropriation that we can deal with those over the next month or 2 months that we need to, and then we can make adjustments from there. That's kind of my thought process.
I personally like looking at contracts myself. I just that's what I do. I like to look at them. I do. So I enjoy it. So I don't mind bringing a contract to me. I know it might be inefficient, but I think we like to do that. But I don't have a problem going with 250,000 on purchases and moving out. Trustee Gator. I mean, then we can monitor this thing, and but we need to have a paper trail on changes and what happens in this budget. And we need to know. I think we're going to get that, and I think if we have issues, we can bring them up, and get our people what they need to move out. So would removing the contract part of this be a good compromise and leave it 250, and then let's just.
What I would be comfortable with, again, this is me, the rest of the board can do otherwise, but what I would be comfortable with is that we remove those two for now, but with the expectation that we will revisit that in a work session at the next time that we can make it happen.
So you're saying we won't do any of those tonight?
Just those two. We'll do everything except for the Board of Trustees approval required line items. We'll do all of the rest of those.
You got something, Brad?
Yeah, if we could clarify, I'm assuming the 30,000 would remain, we just leave it the same.
Correct. Nothing would change. Yep. That is what I'm proposing. So
to move this, and we'll see how it falls. I make a motion to approve the changes to the purchasing policy in its form, except the items listed under the Board of Trustees. Approval is required for purchases and contract awards as follows. They remain the same as they are in the current policy.
Second.
Roll call.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Jerome,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Whitehouse,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Okay, motion passed. Now Patty, let's try to get together as soon as possible and work on these other things so we can get you the freedom you need, okay? You bet. That does it for our action items. We're gonna go into reports. Town attorney, you got anything tonight? Okay, town administrator, got anything tonight?
anxious for the day to have a microphone in front of me. Just wanted to let you all know, in case you hadn't seen, the pop-up vaccination clinic that was supposed to be the Johnson & Johnson is vaccination has been canceled and changed to Thursday from 2:45 to 6 p.m. with a Pfizer vaccination. We're checking in with Larimer County to see about when they'll be bringing back the bus again for the second dose. Don't have information on that yet, but just wanted to let you all know. And thank you for your support on that effort. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board members, let's go around real quick. We'll start with Trustee Whitehouse. Got anything tonight?
Yeah, I just wanted to report back to the board and that I had the opportunity to go to the Water Alliance Tap into Resilience virtual conference, which was about 24 hours of seminars about water financing, resources, resource development. And there's a lot of federal money coming down the pike. And so it was actually a lot of really good information. And I just thought maybe, I don't know if other people knew that, but that I wrote up all my notes and there's a lot of information. I think there's some good resources and I've turned that over to Miss Garcia and that's going to be distributed around to people because again, I think we're turning over every stone to see what we can find to help out our residents here in town. And I just thought, again, a lot of great information. I was glad I was able to have the time to go do it. So that was a great experience.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the 3 days out and doing it, Tim. And I saw your notes and like you said, we're overturning every stone, rock, whatever we can do. So appreciate it very much. Trustee Knudsen, anything? Trustee Joe? No, I'm good. Trustee McDonald?
I would like to congratulate and wish the Wellington Middle School Eagles softball team luck on Monday. They're playing for first place in the championship
Oh, boy.
district. So just wanted to wish our girls good luck on Monday.
Absolutely. Please
Go
let us
Eagles.
know. Yes. Trustee Gator? Nope. Okay. I don't have anything else either tonight. So that does it for the boards. Brad, you're going to take us to an executive session?
Executive session is set forth on the agenda. You would be going into session for the purpose of conferences with the town attorney pursuant to 24-64024B to receive legal advice relative to pending suits involving the voter initiative and possible voter referral matters and claims raised in actions before the Larimer County District Court and possible settlement. The session would not be recorded as executive privilege and we would provide certifications.
Okay. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Jerome,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Whitehouse,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Knudsen,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Okay, thank you, folks. Appreciate you coming in. We'll take 5 minutes, huh?
For individuals that are on the Zoom meeting, if you can please remove yourselves.
Sorry about the money.